As a mailman, I've seen my fair share of strange things on the job, but nothing could have prepared me for the encounter I had with a woman who accused me of stalking her. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a wild ride. Here's how it all went down. It was a typical sunny day in the suburban neighborhood where I work as a mailman. I have been delivering mail to this neighborhood for a few years now, and I've come to know many of the residents and their routines. I take pride in my work, always making sure that each piece of mail is delivered on time and to the correct address. As I was walking down one street, I heard someone shouting from behind me. I turned around and saw a middle-aged woman marching towards me. At first, I thought she might need some help or have a question about her mail, but as she got closer, I could see the anger in her eyes. She started accusing me of stalking her and watching her every move. I was taken aback by her outburst and tried to explain that I was just doing my job, but she refused to listen. She kept getting closer and closer, and I could feel the tension rising. I tried to reason with her, but she became more aggressive and started threatening me. She accused me of being a pervert and a danger to the neighborhood. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. I didn't want to escalate the situation, but I also didn't want to back down. I could feel the eyes of the other residents on me as they started to gather around and watch the scene. I felt embarrassed and frustrated that this was happening to me while I was just trying to do my job. As Karen got closer, her voice grew louder and more aggressive. "I know what you're up to," she yelled. "You've been watching me for weeks. I see you every day, lurking around like a creep." I tried to remain calm and professional, explaining to her that I was just delivering the mail, but she wasn't listening. She accused me of being a pervert and a danger to the neighborhood, and demanded that I leave immediately. I could feel the eyes of the other residents on me, and I knew that I had to defuse the situation before it got out of hand. "Ma'am, please calm down," I said, trying to reason with her. "I'm just doing my job. There's no need to make a scene." But Karen wasn't having any of it. She continued to shout and accuse me of stalking her. As the conflict escalated, I could feel my frustration rising. I've been a mailman for years, and I've never had to deal with anything like this before. I tried to reason with Karen, telling her that I had a schedule to keep and that I couldn't just leave without finishing my route, but she wouldn't budge. Other neighbors started to gather around, trying to see what was going on. "What's happening here?" one of them asked. "Is everything okay?" I explained the situation to them, showing them my delivery route and the mail I was carrying. "I'm just doing my job," I said. "I'm not stalking anyone." Karen wasn't backing down. "I pay your salary," she said. "You should be grateful for your job, and yet you're here, harassing me and making me feel unsafe in my own neighborhood." I could feel my blood boiling, but I tried to remain calm. "Ma'am, I'm not harassing you," I said. "I'm just delivering the mail." As the argument continued, I could see that Karen was winning. She seemed to have the support of some of the neighbors, and I felt like I was losing control of the situation. But I knew I had to keep my cool. I took a deep breath and tried to explain the situation again. "Look, ma'am," I said, "I'm just doing my job. I'm not here to cause any trouble. Can we please just move on?" But Karen wasn't having any of it. "No," she said. "I demand to know what you're doing here." I could feel my frustration growing, but I took another deep breath. "Ma'am, I've explained to you multiple times," I said. "I'm just delivering the mail. There's nothing more to it." But Karen wasn't satisfied. She continued to accuse me of stalking her and making her feel unsafe in her own neighborhood. I could feel the tension rising, and I knew that I needed to do something before the situation got any worse. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I really need to get going," I said. "I have other deliveries to make." But Karen wasn't having any of it. "No," she said. "You're not going anywhere until I get some answers." At this point, I knew that I had to take action. I took out my phone and started recording the interaction. "Ma'am, I'm recording this conversation for my own safety," I said. "I'm just trying to do my job. Please let me go." Karen's face turned red with anger, but I could see that some of the other neighbors were starting to take my side. "Leave him alone, Karen," one of them said. "He's just doing his job." I could feel the tide turning, and I knew that I had to take advantage of the situation. "Ma'am, please," I said. "I'm just delivering the mail. Can we please just move on?" And finally, after what felt like an eternity, Karen relented. "Fine," she said, "but I'm watching you." I could feel the tension easing, and I knew that I had won this round. "Thank you, ma'am," I said. "I really appreciate it." I finished my delivery route, feeling a mix of frustration and relief. As I walked back to the post office, I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. I've been working as a mailman for years, and I've never had to deal with anything like that before. I was grateful that the situation had been diffused, but I was also angry that Karen had accused me of something so ridiculous. Later that day, I received a call from my boss. "Hey, mailman," he said. "I heard about what happened earlier. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just a little shaken up." "I understand," he said. "Listen, I just wanted to let you know that you did everything right. You remained calm and professional, and you diffused the situation before it got out of hand. I'm proud of you." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was good to hear that I had done the right thing. "Thanks, boss," I said. "I appreciate it." "Of course," he said. "Listen, if you need anything, just let me know. And if anything like this happens again, don't hesitate to call the police." "Okay," I said. "Thanks again." As the day wore on, I received more and more messages of support from people in the neighborhood. They praised me for my dedication and patience, and some even invited me over for dinner or drinks. It was a surreal experience, but also a heartwarming one. I realized that even though Karen had tried to bring me down, she had ultimately failed. I was still standing, and I had the support of so many people behind me. Wow, that was a wild story. I can't believe some people can be so entitled. Props to the mailman for keeping his cool and diffusing the situation. Also, shout out to the neighbors who took his side and called out Karen's behavior. We need more people like that in the world. To give a little backstory, my mom is delusional. I'm not fat-shaming anyone here, but she's nearly 400 pounds and in severe denial about it. It started when her last boyfriend called her old and fat. Mom's 45 now and tries to dress like a teenager, and she's somehow projected her self-image onto my younger sister who is 17. Mom has repeatedly forced her to wear clothes in the sizes she gets for herself. The clothes are so baggy they practically fall off my poor sister. I decided to help by getting her some secondhand clothes in her sizes, but my mom took this as those clothes being in her size as well, and tore them apart trying to put them on. And when confronted, she claimed that there was just something wrong with the clothes as, "My daughter and I are the same size after all." I tried to tell her otherwise, but she refused to listen and even threatened to hurt me when I pressed the matter. My sister was beside herself because any new clothes she got, our mom kept destroying trying to wear. It got so bad that she was hiding her clothes at my apartment and swinging by to change before school, then changing back before going home. It infuriated me she was having to do that. So I decided that being the nice guy wasn't solving anything. I invited my mom over to my apartment. While there, I called her out on what she was doing. She denied all of it. So I pulled out a digital scale and asked her to use it. Then I asked my sister to stand on it next, and her weight came out as less than half our mom's. My mom blamed the scale and said it was faulty, but it read her same weight when she stood on it again. Then I pulled out a nice slim-fitting fur-lined winter jacket that I'd found for my sister. My mom's eyes lit up when she saw it as I knew it was just the sort of style she likes. I asked my sister to put on the jacket, and it fit her perfectly. Then I asked my mom to do the same. She didn't hesitate to try, but could barely get one of her arms in the jacket. Couldn't even get the other into it. She spent a good 10 minutes struggling with it before I told her enough was enough, and that she and my sister are not the same size at all. I took back the jacket, and my sister put it back on with ease. I told my mom she needed major therapy, and to stop projecting herself onto my sister. Mom started huffing and puffing, and then left my apartment howling and crying. She locked my sister out of their own apartment. I texted her and said she better let my sister back in, or I'd be calling the police for child abandonment. She let her in, but refused to speak to her. My sister threw out all of the baggy clothes our mom forced her to wear in favor of clothes I helped her to get. Her friends also contributed some as well. But day after day, our mom has refused to speak to us, only cries and leaves the room when we try to say anything to her. My sister soon finished high school and has gone on to college. But our mother didn't take my sister's growing up well. You see, at first mom was just acting sad and playing the victim after I'd forced her to see that she and my sister were not the same clothing sizes. Some said I went about it the wrong way by being so blunt by forcing her to see she couldn't fit into a coat my sister can. However, I really don't think there would have been another way to get through to her without involving the authorities, police, CPS, etc. After the incident, my 45-year-old mom was still dressing in clothes like a teenager at home and binge-eating fast food, and my sister caught her in her room trying to try on her clothes several times. Yes, our mother did destroy a few more pieces of my sister's clothing trying to put them on, but we confronted her each time. Rather than make her previous excuse of stating her belief that my sister and her were the same size, she would just lock herself in her room howling and crying to the point neighbors even once called police to do a wellness check. Of course, when police arrived, I saw a very different side of my mother. She'd put on a nightgown and did not look like someone who'd just been crying her eyes out. Not only was she pretending to act her age, she lied through her teeth and said that my sister had been the one making those noises because she'd been grounded for tearing up her mother's new clothes. I called this out as an outright lie, and she yelled at me to shut up. The police didn't know who to believe, but nobody was hurt. No threats were being made, and my mother wouldn't stop with the guilting waterworks that her children were so awful to her. So the police just issued a verbal warning and left. As soon as they were gone, my mother told me to get out, and that she didn't want me as a son anymore because I made her feel horrible about herself. I realized then that the loving mother she once was who raised us was completely gone, eaten by the narcissist before us then. Just a few years prior, she was a kind and loving mother, especially to my sister. But that obviously changed. There was a verbal altercation in which I pointed out to my mom's face how much of a narcissist she was being. Regardless of the size of her clothing, she didn't need to be trying on my sister's clothes. They were not hers. She wasn't even buying my sister clothes anymore. And if she wanted to disown me so badly, then fine. But I would also be disowning her. She threatened to hurt me again, in which point I told her to bring it on. She may be twice my weight, but she is not strong. And if she were to hurt my sister, I'd made damn sure she regretted it. My mother went back to howling and crying in her room after I said that, so I just left, but not before telling my sister to call me if she tries anything else. Things went worse not long after my sister's 18th birthday in May. She went out with friends because our mother had hardly spoken to her in some time. She'd effectively disowned me and gone no contact, and she was just biding her time to kick my sister out too. When my sister came home from her birthday party, she found her stuff in boxes and bags left outside of the apartment she shared with our mother, and there was a note taped to the door telling my sister to leave and never come back. This would normally be the point where someone might say they were heartbroken. But the truth is that we were prepared for this. We knew Mom wanted my sister out because she refused to take Mom's crap anymore. So she'd been secretly taking her stuff over to her friend's house little by little. This includes her personal documents for her identity, so all of her important stuff was out of there, and our mom just didn't seem to notice. My sister called me, and I came over with my car to start packing up her remaining stuff to take to her friend's house. Since my sister was 18, she could go where she wanted, and her friend's family took her in. And my sister lived happily there while she finished high school, and had a great summer before she and her friend both left for college. They'd applied to the same place, and were accepted. They're some distance away now, but they are happy and living as roommates. But as so often is the case, there was trouble in paradise. I think our mother was hoping to pull some sort of emotional manipulation by kicking my sister out. But it backfired badly since none of us even batted an eyelash about it. So Mom started messaging my sister that she'd cut off her phone plan if she didn't speak to her. My sister responded by getting her own phone with money she earned working part-time, and sent the old phone back to our mother in the mail with a letter telling her off for what she tried to do. Mom didn't take that well, but she no longer had a way of contacting my sister without trying to see her in person. So she came stomping over to my apartment to yell at me and say it was all my fault. Then she demanded my sister's new phone number. I told her to buzz off, because she was no longer my mother. She'd previously made it clear I was no longer her son, and if she didn't leave me alone, I'd be calling police. And then, in a complete repeat of what happened on the day I'd forced her to see my sister was not the same size as her, she ran away howling and crying like an animal. But by then, I was pretty sure it was all an act. The next thing my mother did was show up at my sister's friend's house, and then started demanding she move back in with her and contribute to rent, because she was paying for a 2-bedroom on her own, and no got child support since my sister turned 18. Like me, my sister told her to buzz off. That's when Mom attacked her. She grabbed my sister and started wailing on her while screaming that it was unfair that my sister got to be young, thin, and pretty, and that she wasted her youth being a mother. That's about as far as she got before my sister's friend's father took her down. He ripped her off my sister and threw her to the ground. The man is ex-Navy and built like a steamboat. He pinned my mother down and forced her into submission before calling the cops. He referred to her as a screaming whale for the sounds she was making. My sister was taken to the hospital after police arrived and took statements. The Ring doorbell cam on the house had caught the entire fight, so the dad wasn't charged for taking down my mother as he'd reacted in defense of my sister. My sister was lucky and only have some bruises, a black eye, and a bump on the head. Our mother was a heavy woman, but she couldn't fight her way out of a paper bag. Mom ended up in jail, and she used her one phone call to try and guilt me into coming over and paying to have her released. I just said, "I'm sorry. I don't have a mother. You must have the wrong number," before ending the call. She didn't ever call me again. My mother bailed herself out, but still had to go to court for attacking my sister. She ended up getting off with just a fine. She was also kicked out of her apartment by the landlord for several reasons. One of them being she tried to solicit herself to him, or so he says, but she denied it ever happened. So she was kicked out after a month or so. But she left a surprise for him. She'd spray-painted graffiti on the walls and smeared the bathroom with her own feces. The landlord called me over, and I saw the chaos she'd left. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. Just some choice words for the landlord painted on the walls, and the bathroom mostly just had the mirror smeared. So the landlord didn't bother to call police. A cleaning crew had the apartment cleaned and repainted quickly enough. But from there, my mother spiraled worse. I heard she tried to pick up younger guys several times, and a friend tipped me off to where she was doing it. I found her in a bar across town. She was wearing pink hot pants a few sizes too small and tried to pick up a guy half her age, and she started calling him a vain little prick for not being interested in her. She was trying to claim to be 29 years old, but no one believed her. Then she saw me. She looked furious the second she realized I was there and started her howling back up as she stomped out. I ended up having to explain to a few people there that she was my mother, and she's nuts. The bar manager told me he'd put her on the ban list because she was trouble every time she came in. The spiral went deeper. I really don't know what my mother was doing for a living, or even where she was living, as she'd gotten fired from her job and had no apartment. By this point, my sister was happily off to college, and people stopped seeing my mother around town. That is until she was found dead in a motel room. She'd overdosed from drugs and died in late October. I was next of kin, so I was notified of some details. She'd heavily overdosed and also had a lot of alcohol and junk food in the motel room that she was binging on. So police were pretty sure she intended to die this way. When I saw her after she'd passed, she'd lost a fair bit of weight and looked like she'd aged 10 years in just a few months. It turned out she was suffering from an untreated STD and had likely been abusing substances for years. She'd pretty much destroyed her body from the inside out. In her final couple of years of life, she was the worst mother she'd ever been. Maybe from a mental condition or from her drug use. We don't know. We'll never know now. The funeral for my mother was little more than a very small gathering with an urn, and we spread the ashes at sea. There were no tears shed by either me or my sister, or even many words spoken. We ended up going out for ice cream and just having a talk before she had to drive back to where she currently lives because she had class in the morning. I think it can be best described that we weren't happy Mom had passed, but not sad about it either. If anything, I'm not really sure how to mentally process it, other than the fact that it's just over and to move on. Currently, we have plans to meet at my sister's friend's parents' house for Christmas. My sister and I have no close relatives nearby, and since we were raised so far away from them, they're fairly indifferent to us. Always have been. My sister and I don't even have the same father. We don't even know who our fathers were. Mom never told us. She'd just say we didn't need to know because they didn't want to know us. So there's no point in seeking out a parent that didn't want you. But we're working hard to move forward in life. I've recently begun dating a nice girl I met while having a morning coffee, and we've been together for about 3 weeks now. Without my mom in my life, drama has been minimalized, and I'm rather thankful of that. It's sad to see someone spiral like that, but it's good that they were able to move on and find some peace. I hope they're doing well now. Let me tell you a story about an incident that happened when I was working as a manager at Goodwill Industries. It was a typical day, and I had just put out a new cart of items before the store opened. As usual, I had arrived early and was sorting through donations when a group of elderly ladies walked in. These ladies were notorious for complaining about everything and anything, and I had dealt with them on several occasions before. One of the ladies went straight to the hat section, which was where I had just put out new items. She tried on a hat and kept it on while they continued to shop. When they approached the checkout, the first lady complained about the lack of a senior discount. The second lady checked out without any issue, but when it was time for the hat-wearing lady to check out, I asked her for the hat so I could ring it up. To my surprise, she had the audacity to claim that it was her hat. I knew for a fact that I had just put that hat out for sale that day, and it was not hers. I felt uneasy and confronted her, pointing out that she was lying and trying to steal the hat. I explained to her that it was not fair to take something that did not belong to her. She changed her story and claimed that she was confused and had a similar hat. I was firm and informed her that the hat was priced at $19.99 and that I would have to charge her if she wanted to buy it. She was outraged and demanded to speak to the manager. To her surprise, I took off my name tag and showed her that I was the manager. I informed her that she and her accomplice were banned from the store and that the merchandise was not for sale. Her accomplice then tried to negotiate a refund, but I pointed to the all sales final sign, which meant that there would be no refunds. When they realized that they could not get their way, they started to leave. However, the hat-wearing lady tried to take the hat with her, and I had to come around the counter and take it from her before she could exit the store. After the incident, I felt relieved that I could handle it professionally and protect the store's interests. I knew that it was important to be firm yet polite when dealing with difficult customers, especially those who try to cheat the system. It was just another day at Goodwill, and I went on with my day, feeling proud of how I handled the situation. Love this story. It's always satisfying to see people get what they deserve when they try to cheat the system. Great job handling the situation.